It is 1986. Larry Fink is 33 years old. He has just lost $100 million of other people's money. First Boston shows him the door. His colleagues stop returning calls. His career, built over a decade, is over in an afternoon. He made a bad bet on interest rates. $100 million bad bet. In 1986, that kind of loss does not just end a career, it follows a man. But he does not break. He sits with the humiliation long enough to understand it. The loss happened because nobody could see the risk coming. Nobody had a system sophisticated enough to read the whole market at once. In 1988, he founds BlackRock with 7 partners and a single room in the offices of Blackstone. The entire operation fits inside one small office. The idea is simple: build the machine that sees everything. He calls it Aladdin. It does not pick winners, it maps risk. Every bond, every mortgage, every market in every country, simultaneously. Over the next 3 decades, BlackRock grows, quietly, methodically, without a single hostile takeover, without a single front-page story. $14 trillion. That is what BlackRock manages today, more than the entire economies of Japan, Germany, and the United Kingdom combined. It is 1976. John Bogle has an idea so simple it embarrasses Wall Street. Every broker on Wall Street charges a fortune to pick winning stocks for their clients. Most of the time they are wrong, but they still collect the fee. Bogle's idea is this: stop trying to beat the market, just buy the whole market. Own a fraction of every company in the S&P 500 at once. Let the economy grow, charge almost nothing. But the data comes in. The index fund beats the brokers. Year after year, decade after decade, the money follows. Larry Fink does not invent the index fund. He sees what it can become. In 2009, BlackRock acquires iShares for $15 billion. The largest index fund provider on earth now belongs to the man from the small office in Blackstone. He turns the index fund into an assembly line. Your pension flows in. Your 401k flows in. University endowments, sovereign wealth funds, insurance pools, all of it goes to BlackRock. When you buy an index fund, you own a share. But the voting rights, the legal right to tell Apple, Delta, and JP Morgan how to run their business, those belong to BlackRock. In the annual shareholder meetings of almost every major American corporation, BlackRock votes the shares. They decide who sits on the board. They decide what the company prioritizes. They decide what gets built and what gets cut. BlackRock does not manage $14 trillion out of generosity. For every dollar it manages, it charges a fee. The fees are small, fractions of a percent. On $14 trillion, fractions of a percent produce approximately $20 billion in annual revenue. That money comes directly out of the returns that should be going to the people whose savings BlackRock manages. The retired teacher, the firefighter, the nurse. They never see the fee. It is deducted before the number reaches their statement. $20 billion a year. Extracted quietly from the savings of ordinary people by a company most of them have never heard of. But that is only the beginning. Because BlackRock does not just charge fees to manage the money. It charges fees to the companies whose shares it holds, for consulting, for risk management, for Aladdin access. The same companies whose boards it helped appoint are now paying BlackRock for services. The money flows in both directions, always toward the same point. In 2022, Larry Fink personally earns $36 million. His top executives earn comparable amounts. The people whose pensions fund this machine earn nothing from it beyond their fixed retirement payments. The distance between those two numbers is not an accident. It is the architecture. Before BlackRock became the invisible landlord of America, it built a brain. Aladdin. Asset, liability, debt, and derivative investment network. Aladdin monitors more than $25 trillion in assets for hundreds of banks, pension funds, insurance companies, and sovereign wealth funds worldwide. It processes 250 million calculations every week. The Federal Reserve uses it. The Bank of England uses it. Pension funds managing the retirement savings of school teachers and firefighters use it. If Aladdin makes a miscalculation, it does not affect one portfolio. It affects the entire global financial system, and Aladdin belongs to one private company. In 2019, the European Systemic Risk Board raises a formal concern. If BlackRock fails, or if Aladdin goes dark, there is no alternative. No competitor has built anything close. The entire architecture of global risk management runs through a single privately owned machine. Regulators read the report. They hold a meeting. They write some letters. Nothing changes. It is September 15, 2008. Lehman Brothers files for bankruptcy, the largest in American history. Washington has a problem nobody wants to say out loud. Nobody in the government knows what the toxic mortgage assets choking the banks are actually worth. The entire rescue operation is flying blind. The Treasury, the Federal Reserve, the New York Fed, three of the most powerful financial institutions in the world, all looking for the same thing, someone who can read the poison. Aladdin is the only system in the world capable of processing this complexity. BlackRock spends the next months inside the rescue operation, valuing the toxic assets, advising the Treasury, managing the government's emergency positions. When the crisis ends, BlackRock is no longer just a money manager. It is indispensable, the one institution the government calls when everything breaks. No contract was signed, no law was passed. It simply becomes true. In the years that follow, BlackRock advises the Obama administration during the European debt crisis. It advises the Trump administration during the COVID market collapse. It advises the Biden administration during the inflation spiral. Every administration, every party, every crisis, the phone rings, and it is always the same number. In 2020, the Federal Reserve hires BlackRock to manage its emergency bond buying program. The program is designed to stabilize the market during COVID. BlackRock is paid to execute it. In doing so, it buys bonds issued by companies in which BlackRock itself holds equity stakes. BlackRock is simultaneously the government's advisor, the market's largest shareholder, and the firm being paid to deploy government money into markets it already dominates. A congressional oversight panel raises the conflict of interest. BlackRock says adequate safeguards are in place. The program continues. This is not a coincidence. It is the revolving door in motion. Brian Dees runs BlackRock's Sustainable Investing division. He then becomes director of the National Economic Council under President Biden. He sits in the White House advising on economic policy while his former employer manages trillions in assets directly affected by that policy. Dees is not alone. The list of people who have moved between BlackRock and senior government positions runs across both political parties and multiple administrations. They carry the same worldview, the same instincts, the same understanding of who the indispensable institutions are. The money does not just move through markets, it moves through people. In 2012, the housing market is still recovering from the crash. Millions of foreclosed homes sit empty across America. BlackRock sees an opportunity. Through its real estate arm, it begins buying single-family homes across the country. Not dozens, not hundreds, tens of thousands. In Atlanta, they become the largest landlord in the city. In Phoenix, in Tampa, in Dallas, in neighborhoods where a family is trying to buy their first home, they are bidding against a trillion-dollar institution paying cash. By 2022, institutional investors own approximately 1 in every 5 single-family homes sold in America. BlackRock is among the largest players. The American dream of home ownership is increasingly being competed away by the same machine that manages your pension. The family eating dinner behind that window does not know who owns the house they rent. The property management company has a name that sounds local. Behind it is a shell company. Behind that is a fund. Behind the fund is BlackRock. It is 2017. 3 researchers at Harvard noticed something in the airline data. Delta and United are competitors. They are supposed to fight for every passenger, every route, every dollar, but they share the exact same largest shareholder, BlackRock. The researchers find that when airlines share the same dominant institutional shareholder, ticket prices rise by up to 12%. Nobody fixed prices. Nobody made a phone call. The incentive to compete simply disappears. They call it anti-competitive common ownership. They expect it to reach Washington, to trigger a congressional hearing, to become front-page news. Nobody in Washington moves, because the pattern is not limited to airlines. The researchers look at banking. JP Morgan and Bank of America, largest shareholder, BlackRock. They look at pharmaceuticals. They look at telecoms. Everywhere the same dominant shareholder sits, prices drift upward, quietly, legally, invisibly. In 2023, a team of European researchers goes further. They build a network map of corporate ownership across the entire S&P 500. They publish it. The map has one node larger than all the others. One name that connects every major industry in America. You already know which name. Every January, Larry Fink writes a letter. He sends it to the CEO of Apple, to the CEO of JP Morgan, to the CEO of ExxonMobil, to the CEO of your health insurer. He tells them what he expects from them this year, on climate, on diversity, on governance, on long-term strategy. Because the man writing the letter is, in almost every case, one of their largest shareholders. In some cases, the largest. You do not ignore your largest shareholder. You do not write back with a disagreement. You adjust. In 2022, a group of Republican senators sends a letter to BlackRock. They accuse Fink of using shareholder power to push a political agenda on American companies. Fink writes back. He says BlackRock is simply acting in the financial interests of its clients. He is not lying. He is also not telling the whole story. When one institution simultaneously holds dominant stakes in every major American company, the line between financial management and political power becomes impossible to draw. The Sherman Antitrust Act was written in 1890. The Securities Exchange Act was written in 1934. The regulatory framework governing American financial markets was built in a world where one company owning stakes in every major competitor in every industry was not yet imaginable. Nobody designed the law to stop BlackRock, because nobody imagined BlackRock. The laws that were built to prevent monopoly were built for a world where a monopoly meant one company dominating one industry, not one company holding a piece of every industry simultaneously. Larry Fink did not break the rules. He understood them better than the people who wrote them. He found the space between antitrust law and securities law and financial regulation, where something the size of BlackRock could legally exist, and he built it there. In Washington, there are ongoing conversations about whether common ownership by institutional investors violates antitrust principles. The conversations have been ongoing for 7 years. No legislation has passed. No investigation has been opened. Every January, the letter goes out. The CEOs read it. The market moves. The machine runs. The world continues to not fully understand what it has allowed to be built. The question is not whether BlackRock is breaking the law. The question is whether the country that wrote the law still has the capacity to answer what BlackRock has become.